Paris. City of love, romance and dreams. So they say. I used to say it too. But ever since that day, the day of the murder, I've always associated my beloved Paris with death. I was at home having a bath when my editor called.
Collard, get your ass over to the Palais Royal now. You got an interview. With Pierre Carchon. Yes, the Pierre Carchon. No photos, so leave your gear at home. He asked for you personally. Don't ask me why. Anyhow, this could be big, so if he makes a pass, don't forget. Just smile, say yes, and keep taking notes.
So charming and so very apt. Pierre Carchon was a media king, a national hero, and one of the most infamous adulterers in Europe. He and his wife Imelda were just one step down from royalty. Whoa, I hate mimes, but unless you humor them, they don't go away. Here I was, the palace of the Media King and the Ice Queen. I pressed the doorbell and set in motion a chain of events which would change my life forever.
Yes? What is it?
Madame, my name is Nico Collard. I'm here to see Monsieur Carchon.
Come up, we're on the first floor.
Madame Carchon, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Yes, I'm sure.
The Ice Queen was certainly living up to her reputation. Will you be staying for the interview?
Mademoiselle, I know little of my husband's business affairs, and I care even less. I certainly have no intention of watching him pore over yet another pretty little journalist.
Pretty? You're too kind, madame.
The talented and very beautiful Mademoiselle Collard. Such a pleasure to meet you at last.
Monsieur Carchon, I am honored.
Oh, I'm sure you are.
Call me Pierre, please. But I do not flatter you idly. I was a friend of your father. He was a great man.
My father? He never mentioned.
He and I were very close. And then his death. So tragic. I must... Imelda, your damned cat's in my study again. Another Ming vase, I suppose. Excuse me for one moment, my dear girl.
You journalists are getting younger each year.
Perhaps it's the rest of the world getting older, madame. That was no cat.
My God! What? Monsieur Carchon!
He's dead. I must call the police. You'd better stay here.
There was a man. It was the mime. Do you think he...
Well, I believe we can rule out suicide, don't you?
No wonder they called her the Ice Queen. She would have been top of my list of suspects if I hadn't seen the attacker myself. And if I hadn't come across a couple of murders just like this already. One of the most important men in Europe murdered And here was I, Nico Coulard, alone at the scene of the crime. Should I wait for the cops? Or start my own investigation? It was a no-brainer. Mimes and guns don't usually go together, but I had an idea that this was no ordinary mime. I'd come across this murderer before and written about him. The costume killer, at least that's what I'd called him. I closed his eyes. It was the least I could do for the poor fellow. It was one of my hair clips. My favorite, in fact. It must have fallen when I was knocked down. Some people hate searching corpses for clues. Me, I'm okay with it. Reminds me of an old boyfriend. In his pocket, I found a ticket stamped Bateau de la Conciergerie. Taking the ticket meant I tampered with the evidence. There was no going back now. Carchon had been shot. A bust of Pierre Carchon, humble servant of La France. A small round piece of glass had been cut out of the pane. This was a professional job. I didn't want to cut myself and leave blood on the glass. Call me old-fashioned, but I like to keep my DNA to myself. The killer must have used a ladder to reach the window. He was long gone. Guess he folded that ladder up, popped it in his pocket and took it with him. The bookcase was filled with obscure first editions. Pierre Carchon again. His eyes seemed to follow me around the room. The police could turn up at any minute. Somewhere there were clues to the murder, and I needed to find them. A Louis XIV table with an antique cloth. Imelda had taste. But hey, with a husband that rich, taste is easy. I reckoned that cloth might just turn out to be useful. Even my fingernail wouldn't fit into such a small hole. There was a tiny hole in the tabletop. Part of the inlay had been chipped away. Aha! Nico. You are just so damn good at this stuff. Instead of comforting Imelda, I was ransacking her flat. Why? Because there was something going on here, and I had to get answers before the cops arrived. And hey, she'd been rude to me, so she had it coming. A key. Maybe a safe key. Imelda had talent.
But I certainly wasn't going to tell her that.
It was a tube of acrylic paint. French ultramarine. Just the colour I was after for my bathroom.
I'm sorry, I have to go. Someone is...
Young lady, what are you doing? Oh, this paint. It's my favourite colour.
For God's sake, keep the damn stuff.
Excuse me, madame.
Yes?
I am so sorry for your loss, madame.
No, you're not. You're a journalist. Journalists don't feel sorry.
Not true.
We shall see.
How did your husband know my father?
I have no idea.
You didn't know him? Thierry Collard?
Pierre knew a lot of people I didn't know, most of them women.
Why did your husband send for me? What did he want to discuss?
I have no idea. His business was his business.
He never told you anything?
No, and frankly I preferred it that way.
Why would a mime want to kill your husband?
Pierre had plenty of enemies. Half the husbands in Paris for a start. This is quite a scoop for you. I suppose you're already inventing the headlines.
Just because I am a journalist.
Don't patronise me. You're all cut from the same cloth. Do you have any moral sense at all?
Yes, that's why I do this job.
You do it to see your name in print.
As if my editor gets the byline, I just do the work.
Well, don't expect my sympathy.
The police will be here soon, madame. Is there anybody you would like me to contact? Family, friends?
No, I have no family. Pierre and I were... He was all I had, really. Not much, was it? The dutiful wife. That was my role. He never talked, never let me in.
I know one thing, madame.
What?
If you want to find out who killed your husband, then you let me do the job, not the police.
Why? How do I know I can trust you?
Your husband invited me here today because he needed me. I think he knew somebody wanted to kill him, and he knew I could help.
I doubt it was your database he was after.
You're wrong. I was onto his killers already, I am sure of it. Please, you owe it to him.
I don't know.
All I need is a few more minutes to look around before the police come.
You really do have a moral sense, don't you? I trust so few people. And perhaps Pierre really did think that you could help. Of course it wouldn't have stopped him seducing you too. Here, take this. It's the key to the drawing room next to the library at the end of the hall. It was Pierre's room. I rarely went in there. I couldn't. I was too scared of what I might find.
Thank you. I promise you won't regret this. There was no one I needed to phone. Not until I had solved this case. I thought of leaving, but was sure there was more to find. The door was locked. Now we were getting somewhere. The painting showed the Cachons together, in love. As the poet said, the past is a different country. Or did I read that in a fortune cookie? There was the very faintest of clicks. Behind the picture was a safe. In the safe was some kind of artifact. There were strange symbols on its surface. It looked like the printer's blocks I'd made at art school. If there was one thing I'd learned about symbols, they are always important. But these symbols scratched into stone were impossible to read. I needed to find a way of printing them. At least the stone was round. But what could I use for ink? And what could I print on? Sure, I was stealing, but I knew Imelda didn't know about the artifact, and Carchon was past carrying. This wasn't the time for me to lie on the sofa doing my Marie Antoinette impression, though it is very popular at parties, especially with gay guys. Don't ask me why. As expected, the desk was yet another priceless antique. Yawn. The blotter and in tray had clearly been placed with mathematical precision. My heart skipped a beat. It was a carved elephant. But not just any carved elephant. It had been made by my father. I knew for certain because in my apartment I had its exact twin, carved into a box he had made. So Carchon had known my father. They really must have been friends. I decided to take the carved elephant. It clearly meant nothing to Imelda. I didn't want to take the tray, but I knew that I could use it. The blotter was flat already. Rolling the cylinder across it would achieve nothing. No. I'd spread blue paint over the bottom of the tray. It was ruined. I was a very bad girl, but also quite a clever one. I rolled the artifact in the paint until it was completely coated. Genius! The roller and the paint worked just as I planned, but what did it say? It was some kind of coded message. It read, "Sub judice." I may not have learned a lot as a journalist, but that was a term I knew well. It means a legal case that is before the courts. Below it was a sequence of letters that made no sense. I suddenly realized there was a connection between the boat ticket and the coded message. The boat ticket was stamped Bateau de la Conciergerie. The conciergerie on the Ile de la Cité, by the river, housed the ancient law courts. So, sub judice could in this case mean literally under the law courts, below the conciergerie. I was pretty sure I'd found all I could here. And besides, all this opulence was making me pine for my regular life of poverty. This was a huge story. It was also one heck of a puzzle with a lot of pieces missing. But I was going to crack it. And if I could just remember the name of that fancy prize you get for being an ace journalist, I was definitely going to win it this time. Locked. Not surprising, really.
Did you find anything useful?
This carving, do you know anything about it?
It was Pierre's. What does the statue have to do with...
Please, I need to know.
He was given it by a friend, something to do with Africa.
He never explained any more.
No, but I think it was important to him, always on display. Why?
It was carved by my father.
Oh, I see. I didn't know.
Imelda, I will do everything I can to find the killer.
Thank you, my dear.
And if the police ask,
Don't worry. You were never here.
sub judice was the key. I was going to have to find a way under the conciergerie. I decided to head straight for the quayside on the Ile de la Cité. If there was a way of getting under the conciergerie, it would have to be from there. Canchon wasn't the type for messing about on the river. He was up to something down here. Something that got him killed. The fence wouldn't move. This fence wouldn't move either. It was the old boathouse for the conciergerie. If I was right about the meaning of sub judice, then the answer had to lie somewhere here on the quayside. I tried pushing the fence, but it wouldn't move. A strange pair of locks stopped the latches from releasing the gate. One down, one to go. Nothing like a good convent education for honing your lockpicking skills. The cross looked familiar. I'd seen it before. It was embroidered on the lace cloth I'd picked up at Carchon's apartment. I knew I was on the right track. I wasn't leaving yet. I had a hunch there was more to find. For a room full of junk, that was one very sophisticated lock system. This place was definitely fishy, in more ways than one. Oops. An old shell case. I wondered what that was doing there. The brass case was smooth and perfectly round. The words sinister and dexter were carved on either side. Now any good convent girl like me knows the old Roman for left, right, left, right. But what did it mean here? The hole was too small even for my little hand. Mystery solved. Carchon's stone cylinder slotted into the hole with a satisfying click. I made a mistake. The lock reset. A satisfying click told me I turned it to the right position. It felt like tumblers in a safe. Another click. Another step closer. Oh no! I had to start again. A satisfying... Another click. Oh no! I had to start again. Rolling out the painted, it read, Subjudice. Below it was a sequence of letters, S, D, S, S, D, S, S. Rolling out the painted cylinder, it read, Subjudice. Below it was a sequence of letters, S, D, S, S, D, S, S. S. Another. I love the sound of locks clicking open. Oh my God! The slab came down with a hell of a force. With nothing to hold it up, the cross dropped back down again. The panel wouldn't move. The panel was firmly closed. No sign of any mechanism to poke. I had to think of a better way to open it. couldn't see a gap to insert it. The cross looked familiar. I'd seen it before. Lifting the cross closed the entrance door and also opened some kind of stone panel. Ingenious. If I was going to get a closer look at the panel, I'd have to find a way of keeping the cross up. The stone cross was propped up. Now I was getting somewhere. I touched the slot. Nothing bad happened, which was good. I've always been attached to my fingers. This slot was designed for something specific. But what? A round slot precisely carved into the stonework. No way would I be able to force the door open. I removed the shell. It was the drawing room key. A safe key. The cloth was embroidered with an unusual symbol. It was a boat ticket stamped Bateau de la Conciergerie. When I was a little girl, Papa used to take me on the Bateau Mouche as a treat. It was one of my hair clips. My favorite, in fact. The brass case was smooth and perfectly round. The cross looked familiar. I'd seen it before. The cross was firmly propped up. A round slot. The cross was firmly propped up. The cross was firmly propped up. I removed the shell case. Ut lex vel ut next sumito. To the law or unto death submit. I guess these people didn't believe in liberté, égalité, or fraternité. Yes, I'll admit it. I was a swot at school. I also wore lipstick and the nuns never knew. Moving a skiff would only damage it more. I really didn't want to pull the fence back up and risk trapping myself in this place. I wasn't leaving yet. I had a hunch there was more to find. The cross looked familiar. An old boyfriend of mine owned a barge once. Dampest relationship I ever had. In every way. I wasn't leaving yet. I had a hunch there was more to find. The Conciergerie. Former royal palace, prison and law courts. And also home to the busiest guillotine in the French Revolution. I removed the stone cylinder. The artifact slotted into the hole perfectly. Behind the old walls, I could hear some kind of mechanism groaning into life, but whatever had been triggered had now jammed. The gap was too thin for me to get a grip. I needed something thin enough to prise the door open. A hidden door. This was getting interesting. Shame the mechanism jammed. I was going to have to find a way to prise it open. I was going to need something a lot stronger than a hair clip to free the door. I removed the shell case. The cross didn't drop back down. Some kind of mechanism was holding it up. Moving the skiff would only... I'd wrecked the skiff. Not that it was particularly seaworthy anyway. Moving the skiff would only damage it more. I'd wrecked it. The panel was firm. I wasn't going to risk damaging the artifact. The gap was too thin for me. I needed some... I was going to need... The gap was too... I needed some... I removed the shell case. A hidden door. The gap was too... I was going to need something a lot stronger than a hair clip to free the door. Moving the skiff would only damage it more. Moving the skiff would only The artifact was like an old printer's block, covered in symbols.